Like we're live. Hey fools, how you doing? This is the first episode of Tea Talk, which will be my sporadic podcast where I will elaborate on some of my analysis videos or whatever is going on in the world of Nintendo and video gaming. Basically, we're gonna go over some stuff that I mentioned in my last video about Nintendo popularity. Is Nintendo popularity waning, basically? And my video basically says yes and no. So, I have my illustrious cast members here. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves, starting with Jay.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jay from the Game Cafe. Looking forward to a good podcast tonight.
Awesome. Okay. And next up is Rob from Rule of Two.
Yeah, what's up, guys? My name is Rob from the channel Rule of Two Review, and really stoked and honored to be on the first Tea Talk podcast, and let's do it.
Awesome. And next we have Terminator Juice.
What's up, everybody? It's Terminator Juice. Honored to be on the inaugural Tea Talk podcast, so let's get it going.
Awesome. And my boy Wolfflow.
Hey, what's up, everybody? And I'm glad to be amongst you guys, and you're blessed with the new face of the gaming community.
Sweet.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and get on into it. Like I said, this will be a discussion about my last video where I talked about Nintendo's popularity. And so I'm going to just, we're going to, like I said in the video, I wanted to do a kind of discussion to delve a little bit deeper into that. So we're going to start it off with some questions I have here. Based on that video. So I'm going to start it off. Do you agree with the premise that Nintendo is losing popularity, losing the popularity contest? And if so or if not, please elaborate on what you think that means. So we're going to go ahead and start it with Jay. Go ahead, Jay.
Been losing popularity since 1996. Yeah, they have, and it kind of started around the N64, well, actually at the end of SNES, because that's when the whole third-party thing, really started to show up. It didn't really show its head as bad until the whole GameCube thing, with developers making up excuses after excuses about certain games and things like that. But I think it started around about the end of the SNES, beginning of the N64, and I think a lot of it had to do with how strict Nintendo was at the time. Because you got to remember, you had Yamamuchi and Linker running things, and they weren't the how to put this lightly, they weren't the nicest people.
I like to refer to them as Yakuza bosses.
Basically, and it was well known, because there are probably some devs that are still in gaming now that are still pissed about that, about the various hoops they had to jump through back then. So yeah, I do agree they've been losing popularity, but it hasn't been it's not like it's anything new if you've been gaming since the NES, SNES days. Is not anything new, I think, because you've seen it all before. I mean, in my opinion, you have, or you should have, unless you don't pay attention.
Cool. All right. Rob?
Yeah, I definitely pretty much agree with a lot of that, and I also agree with kind of what you opened with, 2T, with the answer kind of really is yes and no, that they are losing and they aren't losing. It kind of just depends on which aspect that you look at. I mean, I also kind of think that it's almost less of them losing the popularity contest, quote unquote, and also that just they've been around so long that the gaming landscape has changed so many times in these last few years, kind of like we were talking about a little bit before we even started too, how Sony eventually got themselves into the marketplace, which created a huge change in the industry. And then, of course, Microsoft being added the generation after was another huge change. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of a sad thing to admit that, because so many gamers are older now, and as a lot of gamers have gotten older, they've decided to stop paying attention to what Nintendo's doing, and they're getting caught up in the glitz and the glam of what Sony and Microsoft try to do. because they shoot for being fancy. But yeah, I mean, I guess in a lot of people's minds, Nintendo is losing that popularity contest. But I think that there's kind of sort of a backhanded positive effect. I don't know if anyone can kind of agree with that idea, because at the same time, a lot of people who are dedicated to Nintendo or want to find something new in gaming can also hopefully see and notice that Nintendo does unique things. And all of us are good examples where our fanship of Nintendo is almost strengthened in lieu of the fact that these other guys, Sony and Microsoft, seem to do so well. So it's, long story short, just like you said, I think it is sort of a catch-22. They are doing a lot of great things to keep people devoted and dedicated to them, like us and a lot of other gamers, but at the same time, the way that Microsoft and Sony changed the landscape, it's made it harder for them to be seen as awesome as we see them in other people's eyes, I think. So that's kind of how I sort of see it, if that makes sense.
Excellent points. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. All right, Terminator Juice.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Especially so far this generation, it seems more evident than it has been in the past, and it's almost like we'll talk about it later. But Nintendo does not like, we're not gonna put $50 million into advertising. They just already kind of admitted that that's not what they want to do, and I think even if they did that, it doesn't matter, because the time that it really changed, when you're growing up, everyone's like, they'd see a video game console and they'd be like, oh, is that your Nintendo? And even if it was like the Sony PlayStation at the time or the Sega, everyone referred to a video game console as a Nintendo. Like that, those two were the same. My dad used to say, even he didn't know it was a Sony PlayStation, he'd say Nintendo. But nowadays, that common phrase is PlayStation or Xbox that people use to describe a video game console without knowing which one specifically it is. They say, oh, you got an Xbox, or, then that just means video game console to them. So it's definitely been a long-term thing. Like, it's been happening slowly over the last, 4 generations. But I think this generation's, it's even worse. We got a lot of younger gamers getting into gaming with the Call of Duties and GTAs, and it's not cool to like Nintendo, and some people just said they can't bring themselves to get a Wii U just because it's just so uncool for them, in their mind. And I just think popularity-wise, yes, definitely they're third place in the popularity contest, and it's a shame. But for us, like Rob said, we're still getting these amazing games, and Nintendo hasn't changed their policies. They're just focused on quality games and finished, polished games. So we're getting rewarded because they've had to hunker down and just say, we're going to make the best games and we're not going to worry about it. So we've been blessed with some amazing games this generation. So there is that catch-22. But just overall, the general question, the popularity part of it, for sure, they're lost at this point. Maybe they could regain it, but at this point, the popularity contest, I would say they've definitely lost that.
Right. People we tend to forget, people in our age group, early 30s, we grew up with Nintendo, so that was the console when we were kids. Mm-hmm. And the console for a lot of these gamers today, when they were kids, was the GameCube, and we all know the GameCube wasn't the most popular Nintendo console.
Sadly, no.
Right. Sadly, no, because it was an awesome console. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it was all about the PlayStation 2, and the Xbox, the original Xbox, to some degree. So, yeah, great points. All right, Wolfalo.
Well, as far as popularity goes, that's something that's never actually bothered me personally. I've always been an underdog kind of person. I don't just hop on with the, hop on the bandwagon and whatever else everyone else likes. I usually hate that. Yeah, I'm more of a hipster.
Oh my, it's all right.
I'm the same way.
But no, so that doesn't bother me so much. I mean, when I used to play games, I never even paid attention to how much the install base was what was selling. I'd be nice to be on something with my friends, but then my friends all had Genesis, and I got a Super Nintendo for Christmas. I was like, oh, bummer. Then it turned out to be the best thing ever. I got Final Fantasy with it and everything. So, I mean, as long as they're making good games, that's what matters. I do wish they had a little bit more variety for people. That would be a nice thing. Because you know, that's a good thing to have, and then it could increase their popularity more in turn, so, and make more money. Well, then again, money, they do well with the handhelds. I think they always have, if I'm not right. Correct me if I'm
Yep.
wrong,
Yeah, they're
but-
doing.
Yeah, they're doing pretty good.
2014, they tripled their profit, so
Yeah, I
they're
think
not
they're-
hurting there.
Definitely
No,
making a
they're-
profit.
That's their market. They know where their market is. So, and then they're doing, at least they still offer a Wii U, and they still offer not always online, which is something I'm afraid of with the other consoles. But
Mhm.
that's just me.
Yeah, and even when Nintendo was, the big console, their handheld was always still bigger. Maybe other than the NES, but about around the time the Game Boy started getting the colors, not the actual color screen, but
Yeah,
different
different colored Game Boys.
Right.
Yeah.
Around that time, Game Boys were, that was their biggest install base, was their Game Boy sales.
Oh, Game Boy was a force. I think it might even be the PS2 might have surpassed it, but the Game Boy might even still be the best-selling unit ever. Like in
No,
all
the-
the different families
The
of Game Boy.
DS.
Actually, it's
the
the
DS.
DS.
Oh, is it the DS?
The
Okay.
Game Boy is at like 90. 100
Yeah, it's like
or
90
something.
million, something like that, 100 million,
Okay.
somewhere around there. But again, that was a smaller market, so
Yeah, that was the 80s.
right. So 80s to mid 90s, so the market was smaller then. So that's still gangbusters there. So and then I'm sure they make a lot more profits off of those games too, as far
Yeah,
as
yeah.
development costs and things of that nature.
So they're popular in the handheld region, and so we didn't really discuss the difference between Wii U and the handheld, the 3DS, but they're by far the most popular when it comes to the handheld. So it's kind of weird that they can dominate, be so popular for handhelds, and then on the console side be just the opposite right now. So
Yeah, where they're also bucking the trend because everyone wants to say handheld gaming is dead, and yet Nintendo proves it's not.
right.
Mhm.
And it's obviously not as good as the DS. I feel like the Wii and DS era was an enigma. Because the DS won't get credit for it. And actually, Red Knight was talking about this earlier. The DS is what brought us touchscreen gaming. That includes what's going on with mobile devices.
Mhm.
DS made that stuff viable. So a lot of those people that bought the DS are, have migrated over to their hand or their mobile devices, and so they're not buying dedicated gaming consoles like they were during the DS era. So even though they've lost, or Nintendo's lost a little bit of that market share, I think they would be happy with what they got going in spite of that competition. So because I think the DS or 3DS is at 50 million right now.
Mhm.
And so it's doing pretty
That's
well.
pretty good. It's
In
only
this
been
market,
a couple years.
Right.
Yeah.
In this market, that's pretty good. So
Take that, Michael Pachter.
Mike,
They
It'll
still need to go third
plateau.
party. They still need to go third party. You don't
It'll
understand.
plateau at 20. I think he said 25 million for the 3DS. He said that's the
No,
peak.
for the Wii U. He said the Wii U, I think, 25 million.
Well-
no, he said 30,
No.
35 million for Wii U.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the 3DS when it
20
first
for
came
the
out.
3DS.
Yeah, 3DS was.
Oh, he
when it was
predicted
released.
3D. Okay, gotcha.
Right.
hey, can I add one more thing
Yeah, go ahead.
quickly? Now, if you look at it kind of like a basketball team or something, look at how they drafted. They found a draft pick, Bayonetta, who was a sleeper, and they took him and they made them fit the team. You know what I mean? They
Right.
worked them into the team. I'd love to see them do more of that.
Yeah.
That's how you go from a team that nobody knows about to a playoff team.
I mean, they are doing that though. They got Devil's Third coming, and who knows what else. They did that with Hyrule Warriors, so
They got that Namco free to play.
Namco free to play thing. I hope that's good.
Yeah, Namco. This might be the
The
Yakuza
treasure.
game.
Yeah.
I hope you can just buy the game up. If you
Yeah, that's
want.
what I'm hoping.
Yeah, that's what probably most of us would
But-
want.
Yeah.
I'll give you credit there. That's true, though. They are doing that, and I'd love to see more of that for sure.
I
So-
think they're slowly in the practice of refinding and building a new business model right now, and these are like the baby steps to that. Hire a third-party company to make a game, and then keep making our own games. And that seems to be, like, again, the baby steps to hopefully being more successful down the road or even with the next console.
Right. And that'll cultivate the relationship with the third parties, because a lot of
Big
third
time,
parties
yeah.
will say a lot of third parties will say that it's hard to compete on a Nintendo console with Nintendo games, and so this is a way for, okay, we'll give you we'll help you out with this, we'll throw you an IP of ours and work on that, and get you into the family, if you will. And that's I think that's a smart business model.
Yeah,
going forward
definitely.
for them.
I'd rather have them do like fun games like that than throw money for exclusive Destiny advertising or something.
Yes, that stuff needs to go.
Well, it
I
almost
totally
makes you
agree.
wonder. It almost like when you look at the way like Watch Dogs, or even more than Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed, because of how broken it was. Let's say that would have been something that maybe Nintendo would have just hired Ubisoft to make. Like, you make us an exclusive Wii U Assassin's Creed game. That game, because they would work with Nintendo, would never have launched in that state.
No.
And that would be further proving that Nintendo can work with other companies and make those companies' games just as quality as Nintendo's own games. And Bayonetta was the same thing. Terminator Juice, you made a great point on one of the podcasts we were on together a while ago when you were like, Bayonetta 2 is one of the best games reviewed in so long, and it has not had one single patch yet, and is still a flawlessly playing game. And there you go. That blew my mind. I was like, dude, that is so true, and
That's
it's
true.
a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Still waiting for that time I turn it on and it says update complete.
I have to take back that whole podcast now.
But it's
Hey,
been
just-
2 months, so I mean I don't think they're going to find a bug at this point.
Yeah. And just to close up with that question there, my premise was yes and no. I feel like yes, they lose in popularity as far as the home consoles go, but even on their home consoles that don't have the install base, the games are still selling really well. Nintendo games still sell really well, so I feel like Nintendo games are still popular, even though their consoles are not as popular.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's really true.
Yes.
Yeah, their best games do gangbusters. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Mario Kart 8's already over 4 million.
Right. I mean, and that's damn near
So Smash Brothers, yeah.
half the install base. I mean, that's crazy.
True.
All right, moving on to the next one. Do you agree with the premise or theory that when Nintendo said that they cannot compete with Sony, Microsoft, basically Iwata said this, I believe it was a little bit over a year ago maybe, in an interview. There was kind of an uproar around it. He said Nintendo can't compete with Sony and Microsoft, but he didn't really elaborate on what he meant by that, and so everybody flew off the handle and had their own theories. Basically, my theory was that he was talking about in terms of exorbitant marketing budgets and basically brand mindshare. I spoke about Sony and Microsoft having bigger mindshare with the average consumer because of their consumer products like Windows, and Sony is electronics and entertainment media giant. So obviously people will recognize that name right away. So I feel like the average consumer will go into a store. Average casual gamer, if you will go into a store looking to buy a system to play their Call of Duties or their Battlefields on, and they're gonna say, either the Microsoft console or the Sony console, because those are, they have a Sony TV, or they have a Sony music library, or they have, obviously they go to work and they use Microsoft Windows. So
Or they have a Windows phone.
Or they have a Windows phone, right?
Yeah,
so,
that's a big one. Yeah.
Things like that. So like I said, the casual consumer, non-hardcore gamer, for that guy, Nintendo was something they used to do when they were a kid, and and obviously the mind share for them is with Sony and Microsoft now. So just to hand that over to you guys, what do you think? Go ahead, Jay.
The thing about that is he was actually right in a sense, because of when you think about it, yes, Nintendo can't compete with them in the terms of money for money, because just because Nintendo is a corporation, they are smaller than Sony and Microsoft. All Nintendo does is games. That's all they do. Sony has, well, they used to have a lot of stuff, but so Sony has more than just the PlayStation division, if you know what I mean. Microsoft has more than just the Xbox division, and Microsoft is actually the ones that can handle it better than even Sony, because in a sense, even Sony can't compete, because if you've been paying attention, Sony's been having to sell off divisions and close whole divisions,
right?
And they're reporting a very deep loss that their shareholders are not gonna like.
Well,
But you know, it's one of them situations where yeah, he was actually telling the truth. And if you're a person who follows sales and want to claim to follow, you know, business, then you understood exactly where he was coming from. Because in a sense, yeah, they can't compete, but because going money for money, they never will be. But what Nintendo does is they do stuff that's so totally different, so totally creative that it forces their competition, who even try to say that they're not in competition with them, to pay attention.
Right.
For example, back in 2000, I want to say 5 or 6 at E3, you know, a bunch of the heads were like, "Oh yeah, Nintendo isn't our competition," you know. And it made you stop and look. You're like, okay, that's kind of weird to say. But then come around E3 2009, who is having their own version of motion controls?
And Smash Brothers.
Yeah, that's not your competition. Who has their own version of Smash Brothers? But that's not your competition. You see, people have selective memory loss, as I like to call it, because you know you tend to forget stuff, and then you have to look at the whole thing. So yeah, in terms of money, there is no way in the world Nintendo will ever be able to keep up with Microsoft. Period. So yeah, he's telling the truth. But in terms of like creativity and just, I ain't gonna lie, weirdness, you know, Nintendo just they outdo them every time. I mean, it makes them have to look at what they're doing. They have to pay attention. I think Peter Molyneux says it best now, because ever since the Wii outdid the PS3 and the 360, what does Peter Molyneux always says when somebody asks him about Nintendo? Never count them out. He starts it off every time. You can never count them out. Yes, they do weird stuff. Yes, they do stuff that make you scratch your head. Yes, they do stuff that makes absolutely no sense, but works for them. But you can't count them out. And we see that now.
Yep.
I mean, just look at last year.
Good. That's what makes it a great company to me. That they're willing to try crazy things.
and most time it works. I mean, the only thing that really truthfully did not work was Virtual Boy.
Yep.
Truthfully.
That's true. That is true.
Are they really willing to try crazy things all the time, though? Because a lot of the time they're held back by people just being able to veto votes.
Yeah, there's times. I mean, some of the shareholders or whatever do have a little bit of a say, but
most of the times when you think about it, like who would have thought to do freaking dual gaming on a console, like dual screen gaming on a console?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, for a handheld, yeah, it works because you know it's in your hands and
you still was out of nowhere.
It's a smaller risk,
yeah, smaller risk. So I mean, that's what I mean by crazy.
Yeah, by comparison, it's crazy. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I wish they would use that for more user-generated content, which they are doing now. But I wish they would do that for more games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mario Maker could be like the first big step there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
very true.
And it's funny because I think my next T-Talk will be basically on this innovation thing. I have a nice little video coming up about, I'm calling it the Nintendo Cycle. So be on the lookout for that, probably Saturday. But yeah, I'll be talking exactly about that and you know Nintendo's quirkiness and their their ways, if you will.
The Nintendo ways.
Yeah, the Nintendo ways. But I agree with you, Jay. Pretty much everything you said was what I was thinking when I was making that video and talking about that particular portion of it. So yeah. All right, Rob.
Yeah, I pretty much agree too with what you were saying, Jay, and the part that you even say, T, that really sticks out to my mind that I do mostly agree with is it's the mind share portion. So like the money for money kind of shootout that you were talking about, Jay, that's a good point too. Obviously they do really well for themselves, but by comparison they can't in a dollar for dollar battle really compare to what Sony and Microsoft are able to lay out. And also, like what you were saying, T, about the mindshare part, that was like perfectly said too, because Sony and Microsoft do have a larger branding that can reach out to a lot of other facets, and a lot of people can recognize it much easier, and that might be something that's kind of hurt them too. It's weird, the whole quote that Iwata said, it is almost too bad that he didn't elaborate on it, because you really want to know what he was trying to say. Mm-hmm. Even though at the same time, if he did, then we probably wouldn't be talking about it now, because it's like, oh, that's what he said. He said that. Okay, that's over. So, when trying to think about the idea, and again, I know we kind of touched on this a little bit before we started recording. I kind of think that even though they can't compete in those two arenas, and those are two humongous, very important arenas, I also kind of think that part of it is trying to say that they almost don't necessarily want to, because of the kind of mistakes and the philosophies that those guys seem to operate on, that we see Nintendo not operating on. And it's kind of like you were just saying, T, it's some of the things that we like about Nintendo is they don't do a lot of the things the other guys do. And so as far as competing business models, that's one thing where I think that he almost was trying to say, not only can we not, but in some arenas we don't want to try to compete with them because we don't like how some of these things happen on these other systems, or some of their business models are put in place that aren't always benefiting the gamer the way we want to try to still benefit the gamer. And I've talked about this concept a couple times where I feel like Nintendo, especially over the last couple of generations, is trying to create a new culture for themselves and a new niche where they can sort of exist without having to be so much in direct competition with those other guys. And I feel like if they try not to, and maybe this is what Iwata was getting at, is we're trying not to have to compete with those guys. Like, no, we can't, and at the same time, we also don't want to, so that they can create this sort of thing where they can maybe have the Wii U sell 30 or 40 million units and still be really successful, whereas the Xbox One or PS4 would probably be an abysmal failure if they ended at 40 million units. And we spend less money on this and that, and maybe we don't get as many third parties because we can't do what those guys do, and that part sucks. But we work with Bayonetta and Hyrule Warriors and Devil's Third, and we make really good money there, and our gamers get really good games. So I feel like that's kind of the whole idea that they're getting at. And that's kind of my theories on what he's getting at, because, again, I agree with what you said, Jay, and what you said, T, about the mindshare and the money thing and the advertising. The advertising might kind of be something where I think they could actually step up their game, and they probably could compete. They've just made a lot of mistakes in that arena. But straight up money spending for technology and R&D and all those kinds of things, and mindshare, they can't compete. But I also think that they like the culture they're creating for themselves, and they're trying to figure out how to make that really successful. So that's kind of what I see.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm glad you brought up that point about the advertising, because yes, you can do really smart advertising that can reach more people with less money.
With not a lot of money, yeah. Totally.
Exactly. And so Nintendo, Mr. T is available if you want to hire me to do some commercials for you. I can do that way cheaper than you're probably paying anybody else. So, yeah,
so what you're saying is T-Talk 2 is going to feature Miyamoto. Or Reggie, maybe. Get Reggie.
That would be amazing if that was
T-Talk brought to you by the Nintendo Wii U.
I will be on that one, by the way. You can just let me know.
Awesome. Yeah, that was great points there, Rob.
Yeah, thanks.
Go ahead, Terminator.
All right, it's going to be hard not to repeat a lot of what you guys said, but I do want to point out the obvious reaction that the majority of people had when they heard that, when they said, we can't compete. Of course, all the people that love to hear negative news about Nintendo and stuff, they thought immediately, oh, he's saying their console can't compete. Like, hardware-wise, it can't compete. Sales-wise, it can't compete. Like, that's the first thing that their minds went to. When I heard that, I was like more in the lines of, yeah, we can't compete with advertisements. Every commercial break, I see a Sony commercial and stuff. Like, that's what I thought it was originally. And I like what Rob said, because that's what I was going to say. I think that they're to the point where they don't even want to, because look what happened to Sony. A lot of people agree with me, and I think Ms. T said this off air. We might even make it I don't know if it's your next question or not, but look what happened when Sony started competing with Microsoft. They got, all of a sudden, they're having financial problems. They're closing down facilities, and they're kind of like...
Hey, say that. That's the next question.
Okay, I'll save it. But I will say, Nintendo, they have the money in the bank. It's not that they can't, it's that they're not going to, because their business relies on them being smart and profitable, and they don't have other divisions, like you guys said, to cover any major losses or anything. So they have money in the bank. They have more than I don't know about Microsoft, but they have more than Sony in the bank. They just they're not going to touch that. They have a budget. They have a, this is what our operating budget's going to be, and this is what profits we want to make, and that's how they run their business. And it's worked for them for over 100 years, so you can't really question them at that level if it's right or wrong. So yeah, I know a lot of people wanted to believe that it was, oh, your console can't, or the Wii U can't compete with the PS4 and Xbox One. Everybody wanted it to be about specs and console sales, but that's, I know 100% fact in my mind that that's not what he meant, and you know, I think all the points you guys made are probably more in line with what he was talking about than any of the hater stuff.
Right. I mean, Iwata is a businessman. And even if he believed that they couldn't compete hardware-wise or whatnot, he wouldn't say that.
No,
he wouldn't say that about his own products. So
and
that would be just stupid.
They could have made a powerful system and charged $450 for it, and who knows if it would have been good or bad. But the other point I wanted to make, which will lead to the next question, is he was also quoted. I think it was him. Talking about the cycle of giving third parties money and how that's not a good, you can't ever get out of it. Like once you start paying for the third party games, that you're kind of stuck. Like, forget the exact wording, but it was something along the lines.
It was very close. That was it.
You can never, you give them the money and that cycle never ends. It just gets
That's
worse and worse.
An interesting idea. I never really thought about it that way.
Once you start paying for exclusive stuff here, then the next game comes out. Well, they're expecting at least that much this time because you did it last time. So they just won't do that, and I think I commend them for that because that's not a long-term success business model.
Yeah, I mean, you can't turn that faucet off once you turn it on because the next company will be like, well, you gave these guys this for that, so why can't we get that? And so you're gonna be stuck. Do that. So. Yeah, great point. Great point. Go ahead, Wolf.
Okay, so when they're talking about competing, they're definitely not talking about who can put out better hardware. What they are talking about is competing in business. And in business, you're not competing to win a Mario tournament. You're competing to actually make sales and make money. So they're talking about making money, competing in the market, and how many units they can sell, how much software they can sell. They're talking about the console market, though. They're not talking about in general. So that's not, they don't want to put their resources into that because that's not where they're going to thrive right now. Because I think it has to do with possibly it goes, in order to compete in that market and be a competition, be able to compete at that level and sell those kind of units, you have to have a certain business model, and that business model goes against what Nintendo does and what they're known for. So if they're not going to change in that sense, they don't want to make games that, like Hatred. Like, do you think Hatred is going to come to the Wii U? No, that's not going to happen. That's against their morals, and they have morals, and I think that kind of conflicts with what a lot of people want in games these days. It's kind of weird.
Great point. Yes. Awesome. This is a awesome podcast we got going on here. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next question then. And it is, do you agree that the industry benefits? This is my premise. That the industry benefits from Nintendo's presence. My premise is that these game companies were at their best when they were competing with Nintendo. Sega was at its best when it was going for Nintendo's jugular, so to speak. They faltered when they tried to compete and chase after Sony's market share. And Sony was at its best when they wanted to destroy Nintendo as well. Basically during PlayStation 1 era and early PlayStation 2, early to mid PlayStation 2 era. And then to me, they faltered when they started trying to chase after Microsoft. What do you guys think about that? Do you agree with that? And if not, give me your points on it. Go ahead, Jay.
To put it like Shuhei Yoshida said it, we need them. I mean, we need them. Like, we don't want Nintendo to go nowhere. We need them. And I know a lot of people, I know a lot of Sony fans didn't like it when he said that, but he had a point. I mean, you need competition and you need the creative to still be around because it helps push. It helps push your teams because if you think that the other guys aren't looking to see what they're doing, you're not paying attention at all. You got blinders on or something. Because as much as you know, we want to talk about how bad they're doing and how they're not cool and popular. Sony and Microsoft is paying attention. Phil Spencer is paying attention. Shuhei Yoshida and Kazura are paying attention. They're not like dismissing them. They might say it out in public that oh, we don't view them as our competition, but they do view them as the competition. They do. I mean, to an extent, they do. So yeah, just to quote like my boy Shuhei straight up said, like, look, man, we need them to stay around. We need them to be the guys that that they are, that bring people in. And I know some people got mad when he said it, but yeah, Nintendo usually is that console that people start out with.
Good point.
Honestly, they that's the one that people start out with. Why? For a number of reasons. I mean, I think personally they just have the better variety. So if let's just say as a parent, you would probably know I can get it, especially like people our age that have kids. You know that Nintendo has a good
You're breaking up.
Yeah, you're breaking up. We're losing you a little
variety of games that how about now? We
Yeah,
good?
that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, well, yeah, just that people, especially like our age, that have children and whatnot. We know that Nintendo would have a good variety of games that they can play without us having to worry about are they being exposed to this? Are they being exposed to that? Stuff like that. So I think yeah, they're needed, and they're not going anywhere, and everybody knows it. As much as Michael Pachter didn't want them to be third party, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
No way.
In all honesty.
Yeah, I think he says that just to rile up people and get some attention. But yeah, good points there.
He's so lonely.
Michael Pachter's hard to figure out, man. There was a period where I really liked him, and it's like the more and more I followed him, the less I could get behind him.
I don't understand why this one guy's opinion matters so much.
I don't either.
I've never
doesn't to me.
all that fucking intelligent, so I don't get it, man.
I think it's just his role as an analyst and a stock trader. I think that's what it is,
To me, I've always thought of it like, okay, name another analyst other than Michael Pachter. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why Michael Pachter is Michael Pachter. He knows that if he says crazy things from time to time, it'll get him mentioned, and people will know his name. And so when he needs work, these companies, I heard of this Michael Pachter guy, so let's hire him. And this is marketing for Michael Pachter. That's all that is.
Well, and he also this part I know because I've heard him talk about it. He does very specifically cover a lot of gaming company accounts.
Right.
So he's that knowledgeable, if you want to say, quote unquote, because he does work very closely with the industry. It's not the only thing he does in his industry, but a large majority of his work is involved with the gaming industry. So that's why he started to get more knowledgeable and sort of became famous because Game Trailers gave him a show. And that's what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Wolf, you want to give your thoughts on that?
Sorry, where were we again?
Yeah, I figured you got lost because I almost forgot. Basically, we were talking about, if you believe the industry benefits from Nintendo's presence, and do you agree with that assessment? If not, give your thoughts.
Well, of course, if Yoshida said it, then I have to agree. Basically, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. It brings people in, too, and it just makes it's just expanding the industry as a whole. So, and it does bring different ideas and creative ideas. that's why I love that whole user-generated content stuff, because it gets gamers creating content and thinking about creating content, maybe making their own games one day. So
Right.
the more you spread it out, and the bigger it'll grow, and it's been growing.
All right. Good points.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. Terminator Juice.
All right. Yeah, I want to focus more on the part you said about how you felt Sega was better when they were competing and trying to, kill Nintendo off with the Genesis, with their marketing. Like, the Genesis had a really nice run there, and then the PlayStation gets announced with disk drive, and then the Saturn. They had this 32-bit CD-based system that was going to be 2D sprites, and then Sony's like, "Oh, we're coming out with a 3D-based disc, system in the PlayStation." So they tried to switch the SAT around, like you said before. They added some processors and made it just a mess of a console to program for. And that was the start of it. That was the first time, once Sony got in, then Sega tried to compete with Sony and the PlayStation, and it ruined what Sega had initially wanted to do with the Saturn. And then we got, the Dreamcast, which I felt was a pretty good system. But it was over at that point.
Yeah,
and then
suffered from the demons of Sega's previous consoles.
It's too bad.
And then you had Sony was just tearing up PlayStation 1, most highest selling console of all time, competing against the N64. The Super NES at the start pushed it with Donkey Kong Country with these visuals. Everyone's saying, well, why do I need a new system when Donkey Kong looks so good? So that pushed Sony. They had the Crash Bandicoots and Sly Coopers and all that they came out with. And then Microsoft gets in the 6th gen, and they come out and they put a hard drive in the system, and they go for online. Like a year and a half later, they started Xbox Live, and basically everything changed. And then Sony with the PS3s, well, we got to have the most powerful system because Xbox had it, even though the PS2 just destroyed the sales-wise. They come out with the PS3, they make it super powerful, 60 gig hard drive, Blu-ray player, and it just felt like this isn't Sony. Like, why are they trying to do this? And the PS3 was a disaster in the beginning. Sony lost a ton of money on the cell processor. Like, they never recouped that $1 billion or whatever it was to develop that. And it's just like, if Sega would have just kept the Saturn, a 32-bit sprite-based system, and tried to, do what they did, they probably would have been fine. And then Sony, even though the PS4 is doing really well right now, I felt like they've lost their way. Now they're paying for exclusive advertising and trying to get the DLC first, like Microsoft did with the Call of Duty series. And it's just a snowball effect. Now you got exclusive, timed exclusives for Tomb Raider, and then all of a sudden Street Fighter V's exclusive to PlayStation. And it's like, those are multi-plat games. They've always have been. And, it's fine if Street Fighter V wasn't going to get made and Sony just, we'll fund it for you. No one else wanted it. But now they're just buying up exclusives. And I believe the wrong way. I think the right way is to, take a game, they need help, give them some money. Okay, we'll help you develop this, but it's going to be exclusive. I just don't like this throwing the money around and these backdoor deals to get advertising and all this and DLC first, and that stuff just doesn't help the industry. It doesn't help all it does is make the console war crap even worse than it already is. And I just feel like all that started when companies started competing, with using money instead of creative ideas and that kind of stuff. So I think like you said, although when they compete with Nintendo, they're at their best. So that's kind of what I wanted to focus on, and I definitely think Yoshida was right. That they gotta have that something different. If Nintendo didn't have the Wii U right now, and you just had the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, the lineup for this month or for January this year is identical between both systems. And I think you got to have something different. There's like 14 or 15 games coming out in January, and they're identical on both systems. So you got to have something different. You just have to have variety. I always say variety is the spice of life. I always say that. at work and to my friends and stuff, and you know, they don't all see eye to eye with me on everything, but I think a lot of people can agree with that. And comes with music, movies, TV shows, doesn't matter. I always like a variety. I don't always want to listen to the same music every day or watch the same movies all the time. So I think the variety is definitely needed, and you know, I do wish it was appreciated a little bit more, but.
Let me just say one thing. That was beautiful about bringing creativity over money and buying things.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
That was touching. At the same time, and I see Sony is doing a lot of things I don't like lately, but at the same time, you got to remember they are bringing a variety of different things. Like, you can't just write off all the different creative things they're doing either.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, they're bringing 14 different games to those two. I mean, that's a variety, is it not? I mean, that is a variety of 14 different games. Basically, mostly that aren't going to be on Wii U.
Yeah, yep. It's both ways. Right. But I'm just between the two systems, they're identical.
Right.
The lineups. So you need that third. That's something else. So and I've said this many times a day in arguments or debates or whatever you want to call it. As like you have to have both. You can't just at this point, you just can't have one system. You're gonna miss out on something. So I think they need to complement each other. I think you need to have something that complements. I don't think the Xbox and PlayStation are complementing each other right now. I think they're mimicking each other. And then I think the Wii U is a nice complement to those systems, just like those systems are a complement to the Wii U. So that's just how I feel.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's more how I treat it, because I have all three systems and I like them all. But I've said it before. Really, it's my PS4 and my Xbox One are the complement to my Wii U, because that is my primary machine.
Right.
So it depends on how you treat it, I guess. But both are true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't. If I just had a Wii U, I would be missing out on a lot of games. I happen to have a PC right now, and so I'll be able to play the games I want this year, like Batman and stuff. But I think you got to have something different. Just like Twilight was comparing it to jazz music, you got to have that something different, because it's just, and it'll always be there. I think you always got to have that.
Yeah, jazz ain't popular, but boy, is it beautiful.
It's so good. Go see Whiplash if you haven't seen Whiplash.
Oh boy, I heard.
It's so good. I've seen it twice already. It's so good.
Hey, Sony and Microsoft are kind of like Coke and Pepsi, and Nintendo's a Sprite.
That's a good way to put it.
You got any more thoughts on that, Rob? I don't think you.
It's tough, honestly. Like Terminator, man, you pretty much did the same thing I did. You totally took all the words right out of my mouth. It was perfectly said, and just like Wolf was saying, I super agree and love how you put that whole idea of, you can combat with creativity, you can combat with money, and I think Nintendo tries to combat with creativity, and the other guys combat with money, which is way less pure and way less genuine and fun sounding. Buying success isn't as cool as creating it and earning it. Right. And all your summary of the whole history of the generations, how those played out, that was perfectly said too. So just my really short answer to the most basic obvious question, which is an obvious answer, yes, we need Nintendo in the industry. And another point you made, Terminator, is that if you imagine the industry with just the PlayStation and Xbox, two systems that you've heard me say I do own and enjoy, but if it was just those two systems and the PC market, I mean, there would be nothing unique happening almost anywhere at all. And Nintendo, not only do they bring their IPs, so you actually get actual games and franchises that you can't get anywhere else, but they also bring new ideas in a bigger way. And Wolf, you're right, Sony definitely does try the occasional thing, and I like a lot of what they try. I do enjoy Sony. But it just doesn't happen to the scale or to the, I don't know how to say it.
They don't have the dedication to it.
Yeah, you're right. The visibility, people really notice when Nintendo does something unique. The other guys, not as much. And it's because of how Nintendo's just kind of created that for themselves. So, yeah, I just shudder to think about a gaming industry where Nintendo isn't making hardware. It's a terrifying idea. And I pretty much agree with all you guys, and that's how I look at it, really. So.
Yeah, great points. And I've said this a few times before. But I just want to give I guess I'll say it again because you brought up the creativity thing, is that, in film school, all my instructors, all my professors would tell us, don't solve your problems with money. Don't throw money at the problem. Throw creativity at it. Because usually it'll turn out better both artistically and obviously financially. And you just don't want to do that. You don't want to throw money at a problem. You want to try to solve it.
Isn't that what the indie market, both in gaming and
Especially
movies, proves?
Like,
yeah, that shows like some of the most successful films of all time, especially by profit margin. T, you probably know this, are independent films. Look at things like the Blair Witch Project, which is like by percentage alone the most successful film of all time.
Yep.
And it cost like $20,000 to make, and then you've got huge indie games like Shovel Knight and Guacamelee and things like that cost a little and they make crazy money, and people also love them.
Yes. What's that saying about the absence of something is it's either creativity or invention? I can't think of the saying.
I know what you're talking
about. Oh, the absence of creativity is the mother of invention? Is that it?
No.
Or did I just make that up completely? You guys can have
the mother of invention. But it's something.
Ballpark.
The absence of something is the mother of invention. So, like, not having something makes you think. I hate this phrase.
Oh, I know what it is. It's motivation, because the laziest people are the most.
They'll create something that
the richest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like to make something that isn't even that hard easier. But yeah, there's whatever the scene is. I think it breeds to creativity as well. And even though one of the most expensive movies ever made was Avatar, he said, James Cameron said when they had a problem, they just found an artist that could solve it, like a program or whatever. They're all
pretty
artists
cool.
In my mind. He said when we had a problem with this 3D technology and stuff, we just found the best artists to come up with the solution. And so
that's the best way to do it.
They also threw money at it too.
Yeah, I was going to say they definitely did both. Cameron spends a lot of money, but
that is
he's
part
great
of the puzzle.
Yeah, it is part of the puzzle. Yeah.
I mean, to do what he's doing, you're gonna have to spend some money.
Yep.
And he always takes it out of his cut up front and then makes it on the back end.
Yeah, but the thing I love about Cameron, especially, he's one of my favorite directors, is that he came from that low-budget independent market. He came from out of making Roger Corman stuff. That's where he got his start, with Roger Corman. On the
Roger Corman, man, classic, yeah.
Classic stuff. Right, and those budgets were like, dig in your pockets, and that's your budget. So,
all the best filmmakers are that way. George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, they all came from those small independent mindsets.
Mm-hmm. Michael Bay, no.
I like Michael Bay, but that was pretty funny.
I got to give a Michael Bay dig.
Everyone does.
I got the quote. It's necessity is the mother of invention.
That's it.
There we go.
But the same thing with creativity. Like you have to come up with creative solutions sometimes. That's the better. Like Mr. T said, that usually breeds the best result is. When you use creativity to solve something.
Well, and that also kind of goes back to even like what Jay, you were saying in the beginning too about how Nintendo, now I can't even remember how you put it. Shoot, I feel really bad. But you made a point where it was how people can say and maybe think that okay, Nintendo isn't really our competition, yada yada. But they really also are, and they are looking at Nintendo as that competition. And because Nintendo, you can argue is the most creative company. Provided those guys still have Nintendo to look at as competition, they will have to be inspired by the creativity and the crazy things that Nintendo does, which keeps that going and like a life force throughout the gaming industry. Provided that Nintendo stays around.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I think what we were saying here basically covers this next question, and it's is it worth it for these companies to spend millions or even billions of dollars chasing essentially market share? Because obviously some people don't like to hear it or don't like to admit to the fact that as far as we know, the Xbox division hasn't made a dime since its inception.
Minecraft.
Give it time.
And then Sony, obviously they were in the whole 7th generation. So and those two were the most popular consoles, even though obviously Wii sold more. Is it worth it to chase that market share?
That's it. If it's an open, I don't know. Okay, I was just gonna go.
It's pretty open. Yeah, it's open.
Okay. I have to say that it's one of those things where I hate the concept. I detest the concept, even though it's not new to business practice anywhere in the world. So as much as I hate it and disagree with it, there's a part of me that has to say that it almost is worth it for those companies because it can work. It's not a classy thing to do. It's not a tasteful thing to do. And in the case of gaming, we're sitting here talking about how it doesn't even really breed the best games, which is what should be the most important. And a lot of times it starts to kill creativity. But at the same time, look at how Sony does by basically having purchased themselves, that success, if you want to look at it that way. They've done well. They've done what they set out to do, be successful with the PlayStation division, make money, be popular, people like us, people buy our product. So, again, I will never agree with it, but as far as like the base question of if it's worth it, I think that the case could be made to say that yes, it is. Like when you look at it from the business sense.
I got something that goes against that a little bit.
Yeah. No, please prove me wrong. I don't like the idea. Just prove me wrong.
It would be worth it if that market share had a return as significant as like a first-party game like Nintendo's Mario Kart Wii, for example. The Wii had a huge install base. They put out Mario Kart Wii, and it sells 40 million plus units, and that's almost all their money. Like, they got the majority of those sales. But with
You're right. Yeah.
Sony and Microsoft, they spend all this money. They sell 80 million each of their 7th-gen consoles, but the highest-selling games are almost all they're making the third parties rich. And
yeah.
So unless they get some kind of payback for that, after a game sells a certain amount, maybe they get a bonus or something back to them. I'm not sure. I don't know any of those deals or anything, but I know that Activision has become very wealthy since Call of Duty 3 or 4, when Microsoft started paying for exclusive time DLC and started putting the money towards commercials. So if Microsoft, Sony had these first-party titles that were selling huge numbers, GTA numbers, Mario Kart Wii numbers, it would be paying off for them. So
yeah,
I don't know if they're just hoping that eventually happens. I really don't know how they can just keep affording to spend all this money to the third parties, making them wealthy, and at the same time, basically Sony's selling off divisions and stuff to try to recover some money, and the Xbox division reportedly has a negative $1 billion or whatever since its inception. So I don't know if it's worth it. We'd have to see if they stay in the console business, if it works for them long term. I really don't know if it's going to be worth it or not in the long term. So
you make a really.
No, I just want to throw in before I forget the point, real quick. Is that's one of the main reasons you have third-party support on these other consoles, because they don't have to compete with a Zelda or a Mario Kart or 3D World, any of that stuff. And so I think that, for me, that's the main reason you don't see these third parties support Nintendo consoles as much. And they've said as much. They said it's hard to compete.
Yeah, they have said that. Yeah.
So yeah. Go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much more time for anyone else to talk to, but I was going to say that was a good point you make, and it reminds me of I don't know if anyone watches The Final Bossman or Kyle Bossman, but I love that guy, just so you know. I freaking love that guy. And his video this week was like pretty much about that same kind of topic you were just talking about, Terminator. And he's like, he ranks the publishers, like all the third-party publishers, and the goofy, weird way that he does things, if you know who he is. He's very goofy. But he makes really good points. And when he puts them in like tiers, like A tier, B tier, C tier, and when he gets to he puts EA and someone else, I think Warner Brothers, in like the B tier, and he's like, okay, these are companies that sell huge amounts of games. They sell like millions upon millions and millions of these games, and it's really great, and you would think they'd be higher. But here's the problem: EA's 2 biggest games are Madden and FIFA. You don't own the NFL, and you don't own FIFA. Like, you don't get most of the money. And Warner Brothers is selling Batman games and things like that. Like, you don't own Batman, so that money is going to those other people, those other entities that really kind of have to get part of the cut from your success. And it's the exact same thing you were talking about. So anyway, what I'm getting at is, everyone, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch that video. It's really funny, and it's really good. So it's amazing what he says. It's true.
Anybody else got thoughts?
Actually, because Terminator hit the nail on the head with that, because of the simple fact that you can chase market share if you got the money, and that's the problem. They have the money, but they're spending out so much.
Now you're breaking up again, Jay.
Easy for him to say.
Yeah, we losing you.
So, I mean,
Bummer.
still,
now you know
Hey, Jay.
it's becoming knowledgeable that there's the $2.1 billion. Oh, crap.
Yeah, he's probably on delay. That's why he.
Yeah, that could be. Maybe Wolf should go.
Go ahead, Wolf.
yeah, I guess. I mean, you still need to invest in those games too, because we want more games altogether, right? So, I mean, sometimes you might not make as much money, but it's still good to make those and make new things come. I mean, even if you only make 60% or 80% of whatever it is, but you're selling like 400% more, it equates to a certain amount of money in the end. So as long as you're making profits, that's what's important.
Yeah, and you know, my only worry, and it might be too late for this, is that what kind of industry, what kind of third party, especially that you're cultivating. I'm of the mind that the industry was better off when the hardware manufacturers had the power.
Oh,
Now
definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But now that we have these third parties in control, I don't like the practices I'm seeing. And you know, these hardware companies, other than Nintendo, obviously, are having to cater to these guys, and that's why you get broken game releases and stuff.
Not all third parties. Just
No.
Yeah, they're good ones. Yeah.
No, I'm not down on all third parties. I obviously buy third party games too.
It's more like you said, the culture is what you're talking about.
The culture, right? The culture is what I'm worried about.
Yeah, because they have all the power, they have all the sway, and it's they can really manipulate what's the industry. Just look what the hype for Destiny. It's like that wasn't built off of gameplay and all that. That was just built off of Bungie and marketing, and you know, I don't remember that ever happening before. Like that big of hype build up.
Yeah, you know, go ahead, Wolf.
I think a lot of people that switched over to the PlayStation, including a lot of people that were already on the PlayStation, were hyped for that game because it was basically Halo on PlayStation.
Yeah, but it wasn't based upon the actual. Most people weren't even sure what the gameplay was.
Yeah, for a long time, for a really long time. Yeah, it was just concept art.
I wasn't even hating on the game. You know, I was interested. Like I wanted to, but I kept wanting to see stuff that they weren't showing me. You know, I wanted to see stuff, and I wasn't seeing anything. But
I could tell you a story.
I was gonna get the PS3 version once I found out there wasn't a PC version, and then I watched gameplay of a capture the flag like game mode, and I was just like, no, I'm over that. You know, past that. But I was hoping for an epic sci-fi, you know, game, and maybe I'd enjoy it if I played it.
I think you would. Did I say that? Who said?
What I've seen didn't sell me. It actually turned me off too, and that was before that was before reviews came out or any negative anything. I saw the beta footage, and I was like, yeah, that's not for me. I'm kind of.
Well, that's how you're supposed to make your decision, though. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it should be. And Destiny's a unique case. In the sense that, like, we really had never seen anything like that before, you're right. And yes, I am the guy who really, really enjoys Destiny, so I will say that. But I definitely understand a lot of those issues. And I even made a video about this, too, a long, long time ago when they started announcing the special editions for Destiny. And my problem with it was, even though I maintained that I was excited for the game at the time, I was like, this is a brand new game. Why do we have special editions? How do we know it's going to be good or people will like it? I was so boggled by that, and I was like, I want to play this game, but I think these special editions are stupid. And it was just one of those things that's feeding into the whole conversation we're having. And Destiny, again, which I do still like now that it's out and I own it, it was a weird case, and there was some things that did happen that really didn't need to happen that way, and it's kind of strange, you know. It's really weird, and it may set a bad precedence going forward, but who knows, you know.
Hey, I liked it. This is a hot topic because did you buy the DLC for Destiny yet?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Season
I bought it.
Yeah, I bought it. See, I don't want to attack you, but this is part of the problem right here.
It's
that
true.
were buying these things, and I wasn't hyped for Destiny, but I actually ended up enjoying it for what it was, or kind of was, and kind of wasn't, because it did not live up to what it was saying at all.
Which is true. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But sometimes we need to just enjoy the games for what they are too.
You see, and that's why
expectations.
That's why I was like honestly okay. Like what you're saying is totally right, and I will always happily admit when I am a product of the system. And with Destiny, I was a product of the system. That's fine. I don't care. And the reason I don't care is like, you know what? I also just genuinely enjoy the game for what it is. So I know that for people who hate what Destiny maybe represents or what they think happened, they could see me as feeding the problem because I bought the DLC. And that's not wrong. But the reason I feel okay with it and I sleep fine at night is because I only bought it because I genuinely have enjoyed the game since it came out. And I didn't buy the Season Pass. I bought the DLC when it launched.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't buy it before the game came out like a lot of people did. I waited, and I have enjoyed it since launch day. I played it today, and when the DLC came out, I was like, okay, I'm going to buy it. So that's another thing where it's like, yeah, maybe it's feeding the problem, but I also feel like in the same way I said with you, Terminator, like you made the decision the right way. I think I made the decision the right way too because I enjoy the game, and so I was happy to buy the DLC so I could further enjoy it.
I agree with why you bought it. At the same time, I think in general we do need to just stop buying DLCs.
Yeah, you're right. And again, I agree. So I am kind of being hypocritical. It's a double-edged sword, and I have no right answer there. I just
we don't
DLC for a game I liked. Yeah,
we don't want to get into that with the whole Evolve DLC that was announced.
It was just horrible. It's horrible.
Not this one.
Yeah.
Jay, you back?
Yeah, I am.
You want to give your thoughts?
Hopefully I don't cut out. What am I answering again?
Meaning of life.
We're basically talking about is it worth it for them to chase market share, spending millions of dollars?
That one. Okay, all right. The market share thing, yes and no. Yes, because it does give you a footprint, and it gets you in people's minds. You know, we can see it. We can see the benefit of it with Sony.
Right, it's like an investment. You're saying.
Yeah, it's like an investment. But the problem, the downside to that is, you're spending out more money than you're bringing back in.
Right.
And that's the problem. I mean, that's why you have like the issue with the shareholders pretty much telling at Microsoft pretty much saying if the Xbox One doesn't bring in some money, we might say we want it gone. Basically, the shareholders basically said that. It was in a memo and like it got leaked, and that's basically out there. You got Sony's having to explain to their shareholders that they're going to a $2.1 billion loss. That's the downside of it. But the positive side of it is you're out there. You're in people's minds, and people are thinking about you, and you'll be able to like grab that, influence the purchase, I guess you could say. So it is kind of like a yes and no answer. But if you don't have the money to withstand the downside of it, when you're like, because you're not going to see the return immediately. You'll probably see the return 2 years, 3 years down the road. You know, it won't happen quickly. So if you have the money to withstand it, then yeah, it's worth it. But if you don't, it's a slippery slope, and you could probably wind up in a whole lot of trouble.
Great point.
That's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, well, can I just add something real quick? Someone made a good video. I forget who it was. I apologize. They mentioned how Sony bit the bullet with the PS3. They knew it was. They realized it was bad. They dropped the price. They lost even more money. But look, it set them up well for the PS4. So it paid off. It's paying off now. What they did to salvage the PS3 in its early start, that was basically a disaster in the beginning, and you know, they cut it, they slashed the price even though it was already $800-900 to manufacture. They were losing a ton of money, but it did help them. It's helping them with the PS4. I think they gained a lot of trust back and stuff. So they lost. They weren't spending money. They just were losing a lot more than You know, they could have sold 40 million at the higher price, but they decided to drop the price, sell 80 million, and kind of get their fans back and get the gamers back on their side, and it's paying off for them.
I think it's smart. Yeah, I would definitely believe that. That's kind of like an investment. It's like a long-term investment to say, okay, we know we're gonna lose money now. We're investing that lost money now to be successful down the road or with our next system. And it makes you wonder. That's almost kind of like what Microsoft has been doing with their price cuts. And you know, you got to hope Nintendo finds a way to do that soon. Which I sort of think they are. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. I'm glad you said that and brought that point up. Do you think, because this obviously is about Nintendo's popularity, do you think Nintendo should do that? Drop the Wii U $100 right now, and you know, take the loss, and then next, you know, build up that fan base, build up that install base, and show
That's a hard question. What do you think?
What
would you do? Yeah, $100 is a lot. What would you do, T? I'm curious now. What do you think? That's a hard question.
It is a hard question because on the one end, I'd like them to do that because I think it would help them as far as install base goes. I think it'll help Wii U sell crazy, at least a lot better than it is now. And it's actually doing pretty good now. It's not doing great. I think last month it did what, 518 million or 518,000.
Yeah, it's doing well.
Which isn't bad.
Yeah, it's not.
A part of me would like them to do that because I think it would help them in the long run. But I think it would help them in the long run. I'm not sure. You know, so that's the part of me that's like.
What happens if they drop it to 200 and it doesn't kickstart a surge of popularity and stuff? Then they're in a bad spot.
Just raise the price again. Like, go
back to the Saturn. I remember the Saturn did that. It was initially $400, and it dropped down to $200 plus, and it gave you 3 games in the box, and so that was really hurting them. So, and that didn't do anything for them. So that's the worry. And you know, obviously Genesis, Sega was a popular company at the time too. So.
I did say in the podcast that you were on, Ms. T, I forget which one that was, but I did say that if Nintendo did drop the price and still include a game, I think $250 would be a good starting point. And like I said, the point I made was if they had done that sooner, or maybe do it now, you sell a couple more million Wii U's in a year, you're going to sell at least 2 million more units of software, probably way more than that, probably 3-4 million, and they're mostly first-party titles. They'll make that money back that way, so they're in a better position to actually drop their price than Microsoft, because they don't have those first-party titles that are going to sell 4 or 5
and make up the difference in price, basically. Yeah.
But the thing is,
I think it's really likely they'll do that too. And it's funny you bring up Microsoft, because I feel like what Microsoft did that was so smart was right before in E3, going into E3, they announced they're dropping the Kinect, and now there's a $400 version of the Xbox, and that was so successful for them. And I think if Nintendo went down, again, I don't really want them to have to drop the price, but if maybe a couple weeks before E3, they go into E3 riding the hype of we dropped $50 or $100 or whatever, they could kind of sort of do the same thing and hopefully see similar success.
Yeah, I just want to say, here's the thing about dropping the price. We'll all know it. We're all hardcore gamers. We'll know that the price has dropped. But to get to the average consumer, you got to do some damn marketing.
You're totally correct, which is what Microsoft did do.
Right. They did marketing. It wasn't just the fact that they dropped the price. They told everybody. Every time I looked up, there was a green screen on my TV.
They actually told people what the price was.
Right.
What a crazy thought.
Right. So that's going to add to the cost as well. And so that's the quagmire they could end up in. So
I think they'll figure it out, and I think that they're learning slowly but surely that this is the time to take those kind of risks, and maybe they can borrow from like what Sony did, where they learn. You drop the price, you spend a little bit more right now, but it's going to pay off in the long run. And I hope they do something like that.
Yeah, I think they should drop at least $50 by E3. I think that'd be good.
Yeah, and I think $50 makes a huge difference to people. Look at the Xbox One. I mean, it was huge, and if they still include one of their great first-party games like 3D World, maybe take Nintendo Land out or something. I mean, that's not really gonna. They probably printed a ton of those in the beginning, so I don't know if that would save them any money to not put that in there. But you got
digitally.
Yeah, and you got Splatoon coming in May. I don't think they should wait that long, personally, because there's really nothing between Kirby and Splatoon that we know of.
I think Yoshi will end up getting announced for that time, but that
It could
remains to
be.
be seen. Yeah.
But
That's the thing. If you drop it down, you got to have some software. I think.
Yeah.
I
Very
think
good
I mean
point.
they have the software right now. They could promote Mario Kart 8 and Smash. I mean, still, I think
Right.
those games are still selling well. Say $250, and you get these are our great games we have. I think they have enough games now that justify that. But I do want to add though that I think for what you get as a Wii U owner who's enjoying the system, 3D World's in my opinion, the best game of this generation that I've played. Definitely the best game on the Wii U for me. For $300,
It's up there.
That's a good deal. At this point, I think it's a good deal, but obviously the majority of gamers don't think it's a good deal. So
You can take a good deal to make it a great deal. That's what.
make it a great deal that people just can't refuse. They just say, all right, I have to get it now. Here's the games that will get me to Zelda or Xenoblade. There's a plenty of games that they could buy right away that it will be
There's
available.
so many games. There are so many great games to play.
Ton.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of Nintendo games. I guess you'd have to be a Nintendo fan, at this point. But there's a lot of people I know that have made videos saying, "Yeah, I'm on the fence. I'll get one in 2015 for Zelda, Star Fox." I've heard a lot of YouTubers say that recently. So that would be it. You drop the price, and then you're going to get all those people on the fence, I think.
Oh, looks like we lost Wolfflow. Hopefully we can get him back in.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and culminate this thing. I mean, basically, this is about Nintendo popularity, and we basically had sprinkles of an answer to this final question here. And the final question is the $1 million question: what can Nintendo do to regain that popularity? Is there a quick answer? Is it, obviously I don't think it is, but what do you think, at least steps that they could take going forward? Go ahead, Jay.
Did we lose him?
Oh.
We can't hear you, Jay.
Okay, I'm
There.
here. Sorry.
Dead
That
Don't
mute
have to go
button.
mic. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Let's see. What I think they could do. Well, I'm gonna go on and say it. Probably do like a $50 price drop, and because they got the games. Everybody knows they have the games. So I don't think the games are the issue, because we know the software is coming. They probably just need to put some concrete dates and do a price drop and market, and that ought to do it.
Oh, Wolfflow's back in. Cool. I think that will help perhaps the Wii U, but I was thinking specifically Nintendo as a whole, as a company. What could they do to increase their popularity and get it going in the other direction? Go ahead, Wolf.
If fanboys complain about Google and Google Plus as much as they did about other consoles, maybe they'd get off their ass and fix this shit.
Hey man, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, true. About the drop in price thing, I think they should, but here's what I think they should do. They should set up this whole little trick where basically they accidentally, hand quotes, list it for the wrong price. Oh, it's $100 cheaper than it's supposed to. And then everybody on the internet's spreading out the news. Oh my God, you can get a Wii U for $100 off or $150 off. And then they do all the advertising for you. all the news sites need something to talk about, so they're it's like the big story.
Right, and anytime Nintendo does something, they talk about it. So
It's true.
And it's a positive thing too. It's makes instead of saying, "Oh, they dropped the price because they're desperate," it's they accidentally dropped the price. Whoa, we better scoop it up.
And then they'll be like, "Oh, because we made that mistake, we'll honor the price until this date or something." They'll look like the good people, the good guys.
And once people have
Good
it
guy
in their
Nintendo.
homes, they're gonna want to use it. They're gonna want to buy software for it. They're not gonna just want it to sit there and just collect
Yeah.
dust. They're going to want to buy stuff for it. And
I don't know.
otherwise, they'll sell it and lose money. But
Have you heard some of these fools on YouTube?
this is
I don't know.
YouTube.
Not everybody
People need
likes
to
really good
realize-
games.
I know.
No, people need to realize that YouTube is so fucking out of whack with reality. It's not
It's a
even
small
funny.
microcosm of gaming.
But I will say, Fat Gamer, he was an Xbox guy, and he got mad at something that happened. He got a Wii U, and then he just all of a sudden started buying all the games, like Pikmin 3, Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Freeze. Like, he was all in. He even
Yeah.
bought a 3DS because he liked
Well,
the Wii U so much.
dude, think of how good his life was because he didn't know how good those games could be because he probably wasn't used to Nintendo.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden he's like, "Holy crap! Where was this my whole life?" That's what I would picture that being like.
I've seen a couple people say it reinvigorated their passion for gaming.
That's
Um,
awesome.
But I want to answer the question that T asked, and I think it's multiple steps. The next step would be another amazing E3 presentation. Get IGN users voting for Nintendo 2 years in a row for the best E3. I think, if they can do that again, have they got Smash announced at what's the big the big competition?
Oh, Evo?
Evo.
Nintendo won E3 on IGN's polls.
Yes,
Oh,
they
yeah.
did. Yeah, by a
Every-
landslide.
Well, that was because of Nintendo fanboys flooding it.
Obviously,
Yeah.
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 Obviously.
But a lot of people reported the same thing. A lot of, like, the year before, no one gave any credit to hardly anybody even mentioned Nintendo, except for some of the people that were there said they had the best show on floor. Then the next year, they're winning Best of E3 on multiple websites, popular gaming sites. YouTubers are even saying that, maybe aren't super hardcore Nintendo fans even admitting it. If they can build upon that at this E3, even get more attention for their presentation with the price drop. If the new 3DS is a successful thing and that popularity there. And another thing they need to do, which we already got kind of maybe possible leaked information, is make awesome CG, have somebody like DreamWorks make an awesome Mario CGI movie to get Mario back so that kids know Mario again, get the youth knowing about Nintendo again, because they used to dominate in that regard with
Put some
cereal.
guns in his
Totally.
hands.
Yeah.
I'm serious, man. That's what they need to do. They need a battle brawl like shooter. It's kind of like Super Smash, but with first-person shooters.
It'll be Super Mario Wars.
They need that, and make it innovative and actually strategic. Like, you remember a game called General Chaos, was it? Something like that, where you have like all these. You go into battle, you have grenades and all this crazy stuff like that. Kind of like what they're doing with Splatoon. I like the direction they're going, but something with the Mario universe. Why not?
Yeah, I mean,
possible.
that would maybe work, but it also would have backlash. Oh, another Mario. They're putting Mario in another game.
Oh, I hear you.
You get that too, but I honestly think they need to tap into this, and it's almost too late because it's dying down. The CG animated movies used to be the #1 box office movies every year. I think they should have tapped into that sooner, but if they can get a quality person, the guy who did Incredibles or something, to write and direct a Super Mario movie.
It was Brad Bird, I think.
Brad Bird,
He's
yeah.
awesome. He's awesome. Yeah.
I think that would be an avenue. Amiibos have made them kind of some waves. You hear iJustine, her sister doesn't even play video games and owns all the Amiibos and goes and looks for them all the time. Like, that's another realm of getting their name out there and becoming more of a popular brand again. So those types of things is what I would like to see them do.
All right. Anybody else got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just really quickly build on that because that's a really, really smart thing to say about the E3 press conference. Like, in answering the question, which I see the main question you were asking, T, it's more so than just how do you make the Wii U sell more. It's how do you change Nintendo's popularity and how they look to people. And I feel like, there's all sorts of other tiny answers. Like, okay, a price drop is a little bit of something. A couple of the really great games is really good for this and that. But I feel like those are just like Band-Aids. And like the bigger thing, I think they need huge marketing leaps. And they need to sort of work on rebranding themselves, and not in a way that like compromises who they are and how they've been branded previously, but they need to build on it in a stronger way, in a way that also reaches not only all of us and regular Nintendo fans and young people, but also the other gamer. And really strong E3 press conferences and winning IGN's poll, like you said, Terminator, is like a perfect, wonderful example of that, of what to do. So if they build on those ideas, they rebrand themselves, and also things like a price drop and this and that, I think that that's huge. Like, just selling a couple more units and having a price drop only does small increments. And if you're talking about the bigger picture, I think that's kind of the way to do it. That's what I think.
In our eyes and in IGN's eyes, they won. But on your average gamer, did they? I don't know, because a lot of people.
Well, it takes
still don't
time.
know.
I mean, that's a good question, but that's the thing, is just doing it once might not be enough to reach a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have consistent success in that arena and you're seen as equals to everybody else, or even better, you know, a couple years in a row, then that is literally what branding is.
Well,
it's more than just you're awesome for a day.
Most of my buddies in real life don't have a fucking clue what E3 is. That's the reality of it.
Well,
they don't know. When you ask them what Nintendo is, I swear to God, you do not want to see. I interviewed my buddy about the Wii U because I told him I got a Wii U. He's like, "Oh, is that like the Wii?" And oh, dude, so I wrote down everything he said. It's unreal. I'm gonna interview him after he has a Blast Planet.
Yeah. Give his recap what he was saying before he played it and knew what it was, and then get him on the air or something to say how he felt afterwards.
Yeah, maybe I'll do a video one day. I usually just do it about games, my videos, but we'll see.
I will say I had a PlayStation fanboy friend of mine over on Sunday. He stopped over he borrowed the Hobbit movie from me, and he brought it back, and I said, I was playing Bayonetta, and Bayonetta 2, and he liked the God of War series, but he was a little disappointed with 3 and Ascension.
Well, 3 is amazing.
I love 3. But anyway, I was just like, I knew if I was playing that game, I put it on purpose because I knew he was going to be over. I said, hey, why don't you have a seat here? I was like, you know, you like action games, and so I was showing it to him, and he played, and he was pulling off Witch Time, and, you know, he left. He said, that's a system seller. He's like, that makes me want to get a Wii U. He's like, that game was so good. First thing he said when he sat down was, wow, this looks really good. Like, he wasn't expecting it to look, a Wii U game to look that good.
The graphics!
Yeah.
The graphics!
He was, of course. But he was impressed with that, and then the gameplay. He got right into it, and you know, he was.
I like how you set him up and kind of butter him up. You're like, hey, come on over, man. Just have a seat right here. Oh, here's the controller. You want it? Okay,
let's be real. He was looking at Bayonetta's ass.
Yeah. He's one of those.
Everyone's a little guilty of that, so.
He's a rare. He's not like a diehard gamer as much as I am, and you know, he has no problem with the ladies, so that kind of stuff doesn't faze him. But he did like when John got grabbed by like the demons in the beginning, like that one. He's like, "Oh, that was the shocker!" Like the hand goes right there.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
So we grew up listening to Howard Stern together and stuff, so that's our sense of humor. But yeah, but I almost got him sold. I don't think he's never owned 2 consoles at once. I don't think it's going to be a tough sell. He did say his PS4 is not living up to his expectations in the first year. He has yet to experience a game that made it worth buying the PlayStation 4 yet. So I'm trying to get him to be a multi-console owner so he can see, you know, both sides, because that's when my eyes opened when I started buying the other consoles other than Nintendo.
That's a great point right there too. You know, we're in a bubble here in this gaming community. We're all hardcore gamers, you know, so we'll buy 1 and 2, 3 systems, no problem. But the average person isn't going to buy that. You know, average person's going to go get 1 console and that's it. So yeah, that was a great point.
Don't forget about the average fanboy either.
All right. You know, they want everything on their 1 console and that's it. So
yeah, he's the worst of the worst. Like, I mean, every example thought Destiny was PS4 exclusive, thought Watch Dogs was PS4 exclusive because of the advertising.
Wow.
Can you blame him?
Yeah, you can't.
That's what Sony wanted, honestly.
Yeah, he doesn't go to IGN. He doesn't go to YouTube. TV commercials are what he bases his purchases on.
Right.
So he thought all those games were exclusive. And that's just a perfect example. So I've been trying to feed him stuff here and there. I had him play Mario Kart months ago, but he sucked so bad he couldn't even race against 100cc computer. Like
I was gonna say, don't start him on 150 because that's hard, man.
No, and it was an eye-opening experience for him to see, because he's first-person shooters is all he's been playing the last couple of years. So, and God of War. So
he's like, oh, there are other great games. Oh, wow. Who would have thought?
That's also part of the popularity thing. Like in his mind, you know, PlayStation 4, he saw the price, he pre-ordered it, didn't even know which games were coming out.
Right.
Nintendo Wii U, he didn't even know, wasn't even considering it. So they got to get out there with advertising too, as well as everything else.
Yeah, understanding their market. Like I feel like that's something Nintendo really struggles to do, is really understand sometimes what people do want. Like, they do give us great games, but there's other elements of what people and gamers really want nowadays that they don't always understand. And I feel like they need to kind of fix that mentality a little bit, too.
Right. They might be surprised by Bayonetta 2's success, and it is successful. I mean, for that game to be, over 600,000 copies at this point, when we're talking about a platinum game, that's, they, usually don't sell that well,
Yeah, and an exclusive platinum game.
Exclusive platinum game. And for it to sell that well on a Nintendo console, that's a pretty big thing, I think. So hopefully that'll open their eyes up, and so they can market to other different, venues.
I kind of think that they're learning. I think that they're, to go back to the sports analogy, they're in what we call a rebuilding year, where they just won the Super Bowl with the Wii, and now everyone left the frickin' team, and they don't have their all-star quarterback, and now they're going to go 1-15 for a little bit. That's okay. you rebuild, and you come back strong.
I think it's better to say
they're learning a lot.
Right.
Maybe not 1-15.
I think it's better to say they were cocky, not they lost all their good players, because they still have all the good developing teams.
Yeah, that's true. Like, and they're still as talented as they've ever been.
And they took a break. Like, they didn't work hard in the off season. They weren't ready.
Nope.
To use launch.
They ate too much ice cream on Fridays. That's not a good thing.
It took too long for Pikmin 3 Wonderful 101 to come out.
Yeah,
which hurt the install base, and once the install base wasn't growing, then you had Crysis 3 dropping out, you had Deus Ex going multiplat, Rayman Legends going multiplat. It was a bad start, and
it was definitely a bad start. Yeah, and that's what the basic point is. I think that they are learning like crazy right now with this whole generation, and I think it's going to hopefully have nothing but a positive effect going forward.
Well, one sec. When you guys go into a game shop, do you ever notice that the Wii games are kind of like hidden in the back?
Oh, I hate it. I get so mad about it. Oh, yeah, and it's like, okay, you guys, like any new game on the PS4 or the Xbox One, you'll have like a really big display for it. And then like Bayonetta comes out or Mario 3D World, and it's like you barely even have one box represented there. Like, why would you?
They don't even have a box.
They don't even have a box. Like, if you don't pre-order at a GameStop for Wii U games, they might not have a copy.
That's true. It's very common. Very, very common.
Yeah, they only like I pre-ordered 2 copies of Bayonetta 2, and we got 3 stores in a 5-mile area radius, and it's a smaller city. They had 7 or 8 pre-orders. 2 of them were mine, and then they only got 1 additional copy to put on the shelf. So they didn't even put it on the shelf because they figured someone would walk in and ask for it, and then they wouldn't even have to bother putting it on. And then, GameStop, they like to open it. They like to open one, put the box out there.
Yep.
Right.
And then there was some backlash with that, so I don't think they cut them open.
Sell me one of those. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
See, that doesn't look good on them, though, because when the gamer walked in there, they're like, oh, there's no games there. Like, what is that thing?
But here, the thing is, the flip side of that is that I think that's a thing that's exclusive to GameStop, because if you go into Toys R Us or Target,
that's kind of true.
They're way better represented in those stores.
Yeah, but who goes to Toys R Us, right?
I went there
now because I don't like to go to GameStop no more. So
I went there yesterday to get my Kirby pre-order. They gave a free Kirby amiibo with a pre-order of Rainbow Curse, which is a $40 game.
Oh, that's cool.
The amiibos are $14 there, so basically I'm getting. I was gonna get a Kirby one anyway, so I'm getting the game for $26 basically, and then paying for the amiibo. And anyway, I went there. Disney Infinity had probably a 20-foot long by 10-foot high area with a huge monitor, just this huge display. and the Amiibos was probably a fifth that size, but still the best one I've seen anywhere. So they were representing the Amiibos very well.
Yeah, but I think they're just selling, so maybe that's why there's not as much space.
Yeah, they're almost sold out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They had a
Sold
spot
out.
for Captain Falcon. They had 3 spots, all empty, and then they had 15 Mario, 15 Peach, bunches of. They had all the other ones, but Captain Falcon, and of course Marth and Wii Fit. But they had a good display, so I was very impressed. Everywhere else I've been, they've had little tiny areas for Nintendo, and the Amiibos at least had a big area, and they weren't really the games. How they have like those tickets you got to take up. They had a pretty good size for the Wii U, and because of the way they do it, it looks like there's probably a lot more games. They might not have like the actual game somewhere in the back, but they have the photo of it and where the little tickets go in where you take up to the counter. So it looked way more full than going to Best Buy, and they had basically 12 different games for Wii U in a small little section. So Toys R Us actually is the best I've seen for coverage for Wii U and Nintendo.
That price match too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering why their Amiibos are all $1 more than anyone else. Just their default price is $13.99 instead of $12.99 at my Toys R Us here in town.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Is that it? Anybody got any more thoughts? I want to just go ahead and quickly, wrap up what I thought, and then go ahead and close this thing out. Basically, you guys made great points. I agree with pretty much all of them. And I think in the video I was alluding to Nintendo trying to do more things to become self-sufficient. They actually started doing that in the N64 era. You had Left Field and things like that. They were doing sports games. So they were kind of trying to be self-sufficient because they weren't getting that support from third parties. And I felt like I don't know if you remember, Retro had all these games that were going to come out with like Raven Blade, and they had a football game and a car combat and all kinds of stuff that they were trying to do to basically cover for the fact that EA wasn't going to show up. So they were trying to do different things like that, and I think they need to get back to that. I don't know if they are, and obviously what they're doing with making those third-party exclusive deals, they need to continue that for sure, because obviously we have some great things coming out of that with Bayonetta 2 and Hyrule Warriors and Devil's Third coming up. So as long as they keep doing that kind of stuff, and I think I would love for them to bring back a Left Field type of studio, because they need to have their own sports games, I think, to differentiate themselves. Yeah,
it's a huge market.
Huge market.
They don't get to take advantage of. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So so let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. I first want to thank all you guys. I think this was an excellent podcast. Make sure all my subscribers that are listening to this subscribe to everybody in this podcast. I'm going to have the links to their channels in the description and maybe even on the video itself. So make sure you subscribe to these guys. I'm subscribed to all of them. They make very, very different types of videos, so you get a nice mix of styles, and so make sure you go ahead and subscribe to them. All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up, fools. Let's go ahead and give our outros, starting with Jay.
Thanks for having me, T. I had fun tonight. It's Jay from the Game Cafe, and I will see you guys on the next one.
All right, Rob.
What's up again? Again, my name is Rob. I run the channel Rule of Two Review. This was a super blast, awesome first podcast. Again, super happy to be on. So thanks for having us on, T. It was awesomely handled, great conversations. Love chatting with you guys. And yeah, so that's it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. Terminator Juice.
All right, what's up, Terminator Juice? This was a great podcast, T. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Like I said earlier in the beginning, it's an honor to be on the first T-Talk podcast. So I felt it went pretty well, really well actually, I should say, and hopefully, we had some pretty open-minded discussion, and I'd like to think that we kept our bias or our preferences out of this discussion as much as possible. So, it's been an honor and a joy talking with you guys. So hopefully I can be on another T-Talk.
Cool. And Wolfalo.
Hey, great podcast. Thanks for having me, and if you guys want to check out my channel, I don't do any bashing on people or preferences, so check me out.
Awesome. And again, thanks again, guys. You made this first podcast for me very easy. I think we had a nice discussion here. And thanks to everybody for listening, watching, and we'll see you fools next time.
Take care.
Thanks.